Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Blue Chip Profiles. This is our second in a series of interviews of Blue Chip Profile interviews where we talk about inspirational stories, inspirational individuals, and inspirational organizations. Now, what happens if you want to invest in the United States, or if you are an American who's looking for investment opportunities in Canada? What would you do? You might want to maybe approach the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada. And today we have one of the founders of the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada, or AmCham as it's known, Mr. Neil Sinclair. I've known Neil.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I've known Neil for over 13 years. He's a lawyer. He's the founder of AmCham. He is also an occasional teacher at Ryerson, and he's an all-around decent guy.
Well, thank you very much. I guess the last is the highest praise going. The inspirational side is of course something that I accept as a compliment as well. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself.
Sure.
And a little bit about why I started AmCham in the first place. As you know, Justin, a couple of idiots flew a couple of airplanes into a couple of buildings, and the world changed. Mm-hmm. And it was about 2001 that I wanted to give back to the United States after having lived there for a long period of time.
So are you an American?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, just so you're dual national.
I'm dual national.
Okay, very good.
So the things we were involved in was, of course, the Republicans abroad, and we were involved with American citizens abroad and doing those sort of things. But the real thing that connects human beings in this world is trade, some degree of commerce. Mm-hmm. And commerce builds bridges faster than any other known relationship between two people, two countries, and that sort of thing. I have something, you have something, we both want something. And out of that we develop more of a dialogue, more of a rapport. And at that point in time as well, there was a certain degree of anti-American sentiment here in Canada.
What do you attribute
as well?
What would you attribute that to?
Oh, it's a bit historical. It was a bit of just the way the press often puts things through, and of course when we had popular presidents, then we're very close countries. When you have unpopular presidents, then we're not nearly as close. That's the optics of it all. The reality of it all is the United States is very close to Canada. Canada's always been very, very close to the United States. And that was the platform for creating AmCham. Trade and commerce has been the number one issue for both the United States and for Canada. As I think most of your listeners would know, the greatest single trading relationship in the world is between Canada and the United States. We have, from the United States point of view, the biggest supplier of things like natural energy. From the Canadian perspective, we have a great deal of exports that go to the United States. Mm-hmm. And, about 80, I think it was about 84% in the year about 2000 of the GDP was based on exports to the United States. So again, very, very important for both countries. The reason for creating AmCham is threefold. The first is that the AmChams around the world form the largest business organization globally in the history of the world as well as today.
Okay, so there's basically just there's a chapter of AmCham, say, in every country around the world?
Well, when I started, there were about 106. We were about 107th at that point in time. I understand there's now about 130 AmChams because of the number of countries we have and the number of new organizations, and some countries have more than one chapter. So that's the first, is that there is a great deal of international exposure on AmCham. The second is that the American Chamber of Commerce is a new perspective here in Canada. We are American, we are not Canadian, and we are focused a little differently on Canadian business going to the United States and doing business in the United States, as well as American companies coming up here into Canada. So that's the primary focus. The third is that we have the United States Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest chamber of commerce in the United States. And we're members of that chamber, and as such, we have a slightly different voice than anyone else in the Canadian landscape for business. It gives us a little bit of recognition on the Hill. It gives us a fair amount of understanding in terms of policy development and policy work. And over and above that, we're doing a lot of networking. So the AmCham of today is very involved with business handshakes. Recently this year, we entertained the delegation up from Arizona, and we're working with the United States Embassy. We work with the United States Commercial Affairs right across Canada. So to give you the big challenge we have here in Canada, when I created AmCham, the idea was that we have a very large country. And when you look at Canadian business, you have a number of jurisdictions, and it means something different in Halifax than it does in Vancouver.
Because of regional diversification and with
the way our trade
stuff,
works,
yeah.
and the way people work. Ontario, we go down to Florida. In Halifax, you're very close to Boston. When I was talking with the president of the University of Montreal, who gave me a lot of advice in creating AmCham Quebec, he suggested that it was the New England and New York that was their big focus for trade and commerce.
Okay, let me just ask you for a second. Now, is there a, how should I put this, a national AmCham Canada and several local chapters or provincial chapters? Or
just let me just give you a quick overview.
Sure.
When we created AmCham, the idea was we were going to just have one,
Okay.
and it wasn't really working because we had more than one area that wanted to get involved. And when they wanted to get involved, they wanted to see things from where they were sitting. So we do have a national organization incorporated as a not-for-profit Canadian corporation entitled the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada. Within that, we now have a number of chapters. Halifax, Quebec, Ottawa National Capital Region, Toronto Greater GTA, just created a Halton Peel chapter, and then we have one in the West Centre in Calgary, and we have another one in Vancouver.
Excellent.
So they are all, as it were, not outposts, because they are doing a lot of the central work for American business in Canada and for Canadian business that wants to go south, and for American trade delegations coming up into this country. All of them have a slightly different focus because the economy is very different. In Vancouver, they look very much down the western seaboard. In Halifax, they're looking very much toward New England. So it's a good idea to have more than one AmCham, although we are all working together. It's a cooperative number of chapters that do best practices and try to create interest in membership.
Okay. What do you see as some of the future challenges for AmCham, looking at, say, 5 to 10 years down?
Well, from a leadership perspective, when I created AmCham, the idea was to try to get a team going. And whenever you can get a team going, then you have a lot more energy. And I think that's part of inspirational leadership, is developing people that have a sense of the same values, same vision, and want to implement same type of ideas as you do. So that is always, I think, the first challenge with any business chamber. It is meeting members' needs. It's understanding your business profile, it's understanding the goals and the team that you have working for you, and then try to get everyone working in the same direction. The AmCham today, under its current leadership, is a little bit more event-focused than we used to be in the past, and perhaps a little bit less policy-focused, although we have a very active policy organization centered in the National Capital Region. So the idea is to have a dynamic local enterprise that people, not just large companies like FedEx, which is one of the founding members, but smaller individuals that want to take advantage in the global economy. We want them to think North American. We want a small business, let's say in the St. Catharines area around here, with the border so close to us, we want them to have a very good idea that, well, it's not impossible to go over the border and sell your goods and services down there as well as in Ontario.
Okay, so this is really designed for medium-sized businesses and local merchants.
It's moving that way.
Yeah.
It's moving much more that way than it was. Obviously, we have the great flagships like the accounting companies, and I'm going to thank KPMG once again. because they've done a tremendous leadership across Canada in creating AmCham as an organization for business and for networking. I'm looking at CBRE, who is a real estate company based in Los Angeles, the largest one around the world. And they have a very active association with AmCham here as well. So the companies that we have, the large ones, certainly recognize both the policy issues as well as business across the border. The smaller businesses where we're now targeting our membership and our activities, so we can give businesses on both sides of the border a little bit more of a focus of how do you branch into Canada. We have a lot of phone calls on that. We have phone calls on, well, I want to take my product south, what do I have to do, and do I really have to deal with the IRS? And the answer is perhaps you do, but maybe there are ways of doing it. A lot of people don't know we have a lot of law firms here in Canada that are American. Taxation, we have firms on both sides of the border, like the KPMG, that have a full corporate services for American taxation here in Toronto. We have a number of entrepreneurs, small lawyers, and accountants right across the country that are also involved in cross-border expertise. So that's where I think we're moving in the next little while. And it's my hope that that'll create more opportunities, because leadership and inspiration is about creating opportunities. If life is status quo, we're not going to go very far. If we did what we did yesterday, we're still not going to go very far. So if you are going to be a leader and you're going to inspire people, you have to inspire them on opportunities that they can see, that they can touch, that they can feel. And as you know, in the world of business, you can always build another bridge. You can always have another handshake. You can always create more value. And you can also expand your horizons. So that's part of the reasons for an AmCham. One of, as I say, many around the world, all doing about the same thing.
Okay, excellent. Now, what is really driving you today at this point?
On the AmCham front, or
Yeah.
overall general?
Well, on both. You see, I know that you've got your hand in many pies, so it's...
Well, I'll stick with AmCham at this point in
Okay.
time, but what drives human beings is a sense of purpose.
Mhm.
If you don't have a mission or purpose for your own life, then you can't sort of share it with somebody else. Right? So, as you know, we've tried to do a little bit on the civic government side. Why? Because people need a forum to get involved with as citizens, because our elected officials are now a point of lobby, not a point of representation.
Okay.
The world is moving on that.
And you're even doing some work as a community advocate right in your
That's the sort of thing.
hometown in Toronto.
But to circle back to the AmCham,
Sure.
one of the things I want to do is I want to awake the United States Chamber and Congress down into keeping some recognition that Canada is a major trading partner, and it's something that shouldn't be just sort of relegated to the sidelines of, oh, they take it for granted. The last thing we want in the world right now is for Canada and the relationship with the United States to be taken for granted. So that's an ongoing inspiration I have that takes me down to Washington, D.C. on a regular basis.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Washington, D.C. What have you managed to accomplish in some of these trips? Tell me a little bit about the trips in general.
Well, they're focused on one of three type of avenues. The first avenue is the relationship base. We've always had some feet on the street in Washington, because if you're a large company, or even if you're a small company, and you have a number of concerns with American policy, the biggest one right now being still taxation based on citizenship as opposed to residency, then you need some voice down there. The U.S. Chamber is one, but we have also had other voices down there. And I've done some door knocking on the Hill as well, to try to give a sense of awareness and a sense of why they have to also consider one of the 4,000 issues they have every day as the Canadian relationship and what affects Americans here that are resident here in Canada. One of the things we've done very well, I think, is the cross-border taxation issues. We've had a very large and a very strong taxation committee that works both with the U.S. Chamber and with parts of the Hill, including the Treasury Department. So there are a number of delegations that have gone down on that.
Okay, so it sounds like you've been very successful on a lot of fronts.
On the policy side, well, welcome to policy. You never change anything overnight. Policy's a ripple.
Yeah.
And if you can make a little bit of a ripple, then hopefully it moves in the right direction, and hopefully you get some results at the end of the day. We've had a lot of success, though, with individual contacts. In the wonderful world of business, as you know, sometimes it's who you know and how you know them, and just as importantly, how they know you. And establishing the rapport and dialogues and communication pathways, not just for yourself but for other people, that becomes a very big factor as well. We have a chap by the name of Mark Cohen down there right now in his enterprise, which is very well connected for helping establish businesses that want to go into the United States and expand their markets in a very serious way. As you know, we have companies like Tim Hortons that is very dedicated now on expanding in the United States. And I just picked that because it's a popular name that people know.
Yeah, they're also expanding in Ireland and England as well.
And the Middle East, I hear. So
yeah.
Welcome to AmCham Kuwait or AmCham Gulf States.
It's amazing the opportunities that are available.
That's a handshake because of commonality of experience, commonality sometimes of purposes. Some AmChams have a lot of nationals involved with the organization. It's not just a bunch of Americans sitting overseas and doing back and forth with their own country. If you were picking AmCham Gulf States, yes, there are American companies up there with the oil patches and everything else, but there are also some nationals that know how to do the handshakes the other directions. So business chambers work a little differently all around the world, and they, like they do here in Canada, we focus on where the impact is to drive members' needs. And if you can do that, you're usually further along.
Okay. Well, I think that's about it in terms of questions. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, number one, I want to thank you
you're very welcome.
For interviewing me and considering me inspirational. I think if I had one message as to how to inspire other people or how to take a bit of my experience and move it into the inspirational front, I think would be having an idea of purpose and having an idea of goals. And if you have a sense of a purpose wider than yourself, wider than your self-interest, then you can have something that will speak and vibrate with other people. So a lot of it's about you, about the other person. It's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what helps other people gravitate to a leader, because it's about them.
Well, exactly, because like what I've found being involved in various organizations is that sometimes in leadership they tend to confuse the issues. They think the leaders tend to think it's about them, when in fact it's about the others who you are working with and the responsibilities you have to those members of the organization. So I think it's very important that they realize the purpose and the goals and the fiduciary responsibility they have to the organization.
Well, that's well put. I wish that everybody understood the same things that you do. And leadership is an ongoing thing. Inspiration is an ongoing thing. It doesn't go away. It's something that has to be passed on and shared.
Exactly. Okay, well listen, that brings us to the end of our interview. Thank you again, Neil, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.